I appreciate it. Amazing. Here we go. I'd love to hear from someone who wants to kick us off this week. Dennis.
I really enjoyed this chapter because it's so easy to seek the acceptance of others, which the point was made in the section, that we learn to serve, or we learn to please at an early age so we can get what we want, because goddamn, if I make you happy, I'm going to get everything I want, right? But it isn't about that when it comes to coaching. When it comes to coaching, if you really love and you are really in service, then you are going to speak truth. Truth isn't always popular. Truth doesn't always make everyone warm and fuzzy and create a happy place. But that's not what we're here for. I'm going to tell you from my last 14 months of transformation, there have been some uncomfortable spots. But that's good because when there's a rub, when there's friction, that means that something needs to be polished there. All right. We wouldn't be able to operate in the world without friction. We couldn't touch anything. We couldn't push away from the table. We couldn't drive cars. We couldn't walk. We couldn't do anything. But in our personal lives, in our soul, in our spirit, in our connection with the universe, in our connection with others, friction isn't a good thing. So if you're going to go and you're going to try and make it easy for everybody to like you and want to call you back for another coaching section and increase the package and stuff like that, don't be their buddy, be their friend. And when I say that, what I mean is a true friend tells you the truth about whatever's going on in the world. They tell you the truth about what they see. They tell you the truth about what they think. And when you find somebody like that, I'll pick Will as an example because when Will and I are having a conversation, if he hears something that sounds bullshitstical to him, he calls me on it. And I welcome that because if I'm experiencing that story that I create, and I think that that's the way things really are, and I don't start to look behind that facade, then I don't see that. So serve. You want me to grow, you want me to flourish, you want me to be everything that I can possibly be, then serve me. Don't make me happy. Don't please me.
Mm. I love what you say. Thank you very much for the.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Um, and you're absolutely right. Like effective coaching, this distinction is the basis of effective coaching. And that discomfort that you referred to, I think it's really important to remind ourselves that it's a temporary discomfort. Someone might be hoping to hear a certain thing because they know it'll stroke them on some level. And when you don't give them that, it can make the conversation a bit uncomfortable. And I'm not saying setting out to upset people, but discomfort, even upset, can sometimes, or this looks true to me, can sometimes be a byproduct of a very truthful, honest, effective conversation. And what I love in this chapter is Steve Chandler is um, the audio is a bit more sort of business focused. But in the chapter in particular, he points to more effective, helpful communication in all relationships. Like it's not just about business, it's not just about a coaching call. This is about being choosing to be a truthful human being, a truthful person, and communicating from a more authentic place and hopefully connecting to the most authentic part of the person that you're in communication with. I'd love to ask Dennis, could you give an example? Like you pointed to the last year, and you've yeah, there are some people in this call who have been with you for that year and have seen the journey and the transformation that's gone on. Um, would you be happy to give an example of a time you were served and it was uncomfortable?
Every damn time I talk to Nick Bottini. No. Let me tell you, I love Nick with my soul. I mean, there is nothing that anybody will ever ask of me for Nick Bottini that I won't do because I just love the guy. He's spoken into my life volumes. He does nothing but give to me, and he loves me and he accepts me. So Nick, most recently, we were making comments on the laser sessions. And I make a comment, all of a sudden, ping, the messenger goes off, which is what happens. It's like Nick is the universe, and he's like tracking everything, and it's like, bam, hey, here's what I noticed. And the recent one was, don't say, oh, that was a nice laser session, because nobody gets anything out of that. He said, be specific and tell people why you are different as a result of seeing somebody else's journey and something that speaks to you. Because that resonance that you establish as a result of that shift in your frequency, that shift in your perspective, your point of view, that's the real deal. That's where the rubber meets the road. Because we shouldn't go and spend all the time that we're spending with each other and not be different for the exchange. That would be ludicrous. That would be stupid to go and invest all this time into loving people, into becoming part of their lives, and not make it a truthful exchange and not get something real out of it. All right. And I'm going to tell you right now, if I ever had to go in and interrogate anybody, I'd take Will, I'd take Jane, I'd take, Chris, because we are all learning to spot bullshit a mile away. That's just how that works. Why? Because we've had that transformation in our own lives. So yeah, so like there, that being specific about how whatever occurred in the laser session and the person being interviewed, how they opened their heart and spoke of their journey and explained what was happening and their insights and their transformation, and how that, wow, oh wow, wow, that changed my perspective. That changes how I see things. That changes how I relate to the universe and to the people around me. So the cool thing about the whole transformation thing is, if you look every day for an opportunity to change and grow and transform and be more you, you're going to find it.
Thank you. Sash.
Hello. Um, I think the biggest part for me was the bit about resentment. Um, and I think it's really interesting because it's something that I've been like practicing is like for years and years, trying not to be a people pleaser because I definitely was ingrained in every part of my life at one point. Um, and I remember I used to be characterized as like a nice person, but you not in like a good way, like where people are like, oh, she's so nice, and I kept used to thinking like I'm more than that, like, and I think it was because it was rooted from people pleasing because that was the person that I was like presenting as because I was just like basically being fueled by people pleasing, um, and where I've kind of tried to strip that over the years it's I'm noticing that it all comes just down to habit. Like because where he mentioned that it comes from when you're a child, that you're taught these things, and then realizing when you start practicing it is that it's actually so much easier as well for yourself when you're serving. Like, it's not just that you're doing what's best for the person that's in the room or that you're talking to, but it's just so much easier for yourself. And I mean, I used to do it at work all the time. I'd create myself more admin work and get really stressed that I had so much to do. And then I realized that because I wasn't managing it on the phone with the person, I was creating myself more work and then resenting my job or resenting the person that I was speaking with, because I was like, oh, they're making me do this. So I think like the example where he was talking about the woman that was running her business, and she's like, oh, my mum calls me and it's distracting and it's ruining my day and all this. And, you know, the fact that you can just not answer, and acknowledging that external things or people are it's gonna come at you. You can't control that somebody's gonna ask you to do something, or it's gonna ask you a favor, or, you know, contact you. Like, you can't control those kind of actions from others, but what you can control is then how you respond to it and managing that, and by serving not only them but yourself as well. And a good example that I had is that I work from home, so I would be like the last, like the contacts that everyone will come to and say, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? And I kept thinking that I have to prove, because if I can't do it, then it means something about me, that I'm not like capable of doing my job. So I kept going, yes, 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 I'll do that. And my boss turned around to me one day and she was like, I don't know how much you can cope with. Like, it's not because, how do I word it? She basically said, she was like, if you keep saying yes, I'm going to give you more. Like, if you keep acting like you can handle it, then of course I'm going to keep giving you more work. And she was like, I've got my own 40-hour, you know, week to be thinking of, and I'm busy doing this. Like, the last thing on her mind is going to be, oh, can Sash handle her workload? She's just not going to think that unless I say it. And that was a really big like wake up call for me, because I used to think like, oh, they know how much they've given me, like they know how much I'm asking, but she doesn't know about the 10 other people that have also asked me to do something. So yeah, that's definitely something that I've been kind of working with over a long time. And it's actually really funny because I people pleased today in a situation, and it felt really uncomfortable, and I knew that I was doing it, and I still did it. And then afterwards I kind of took a moment. I was like, oh, well, like, I knew it was just habit. The habit was ingrained still slightly, and I did it, but I could feel that it wasn't right. And that was probably the first time that I've people pleased and in the moment going, this isn't right, still done it, and then gone back and going, okay, don't do that again, kind of thing. Like, that's not working for you. So yeah, that was my little 2 cents.
That's massive. I love that.
Oh, thanks.
It's the hamster wheel.
Mm.
Like, the first step is noticing that you're on a hamster wheel, and then the next thing is noticing that you're the one that's keeping it going around. And I mean, there's so much in what you've said. Thank you for sharing. What one thing I will say as a gentle challenge, you will go there again. We all will. Um, and that's why we talk about holding ourselves with loving curiosity rather than creating a rod to beat ourselves when we notice these things. It's, oh, I'm doing that thing, or I did that thing in that. Okay, cool, and carry on. And then,
Mm.
you know, you called it a habit, and habits are practiced. You know, if what you say is true, that this is the first time in your living memory that you have caught yourself and gone, I'm doing that thing.
Mm.
And before that is 28 odd years of practicing the stance of people pleasing.
Mm.
It's huge to notice. Noticing is where the empowerment happens. I'd love to ask you. It sounds like you're very very much on the path of noticing this, and um, that sounds like a really powerful experience you had with your boss manager.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Um, you also said, the service goes both ways. Like this creates a win-win. Like I am also served by doing this. I'd love to ask, what are you noticing in your own life as you shift into this new way of being?
I feel more honest, more calm, like clear-headed. Um, Not of that sense where you have to keep up with something and kind of keep like the actions that follow it. So I'm sure, I mean, we've probably all been in a situation where someone asks if you're free, or you, and then you say yes to it, and then last minute you might then cancel on them because actually you couldn't have fit it in the first place, and you probably shouldn't have said yes, or something's come up and you get that like worrying anxiety with it. I used to do that all the time. And it's just, yeah, feeling okay and knowing that like your relationships aren't going to be, they're not going to be badly impacted by that. They're actually going to be a more positive experience, because you don't then have that kind of guilt feeling of, oh, I have to overcompensate or make up for it because of your actions have come from people pleasing. I think that's probably the biggest change, is that you're not always trying to like make up for it afterwards and feel like you're overcompensating, or um, feeling like you're chasing your tail a little bit.
Putting out fires is what Steve Chandler's example client in the book says. And I think that's the segment called "Now the Door is Open to Hell." So it's yeah, yeah, love that. Is there any more you'd like to share for now?
No, that's everything.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you. Chris.
Hey, friends. Hey, new friends. Um, Sasha, the question, are you free? Wow, what a trap, right? The number of times in my life before I started to wake up to this level of interaction and the difference between serving and people pleasing, um, I wouldn't think twice about being asked if I was free for something. And then there's always that little bit of, well, for what? And then, but since we can't control how other people might present an opportunity to us, though, what I'm beginning to realize is that what I can do is when I reach out to someone else about something that they may or may not be interested, at least create some context first and say, there's a situation coming up. Here's the time. If you're interested, I'd like to talk to you about it. Um, Instead of saying, are you free this Monday from 1 to 2:30? I don't think I said that, Scott. I don't think so. But anyway, so and in terms of how to answer that question too, I find it's like, well, it's very dependent on who's asking and how they're asking. But there is that bit of, oh, wait a minute, before I open my mouth with a reply, think. And yeah, I mean, it takes some conscious effort, and we use that phrase all the time with our friends and our colleagues and whatnot. So thank you for bringing that up. That was great. These chapters of the book take me the the first example I heard spoken of the difference between serving and pleasing was in the Netflix series Coach's Playbook. Highly recommend. They're all athletic coaches, and this particular individual was Serena Williams' tennis coach, and his name is Patrick Mouratoglou. He runs his own tennis academy in France, very reputable, highly respected. And he tells a story about how Serena and her entourage came in the first day that they were going to be working together, and just she kind of blew him off and walked right past him when he said hello to her. and the entourage went inside, and then he went and I'm getting most of this story right. But then when he decided he need to address it, and he walked into her, knowing the size of this personality, he decided to test a boundary, and she was wearing a cap, tennis cap or ball cap, and he wrapped the brim of the ball cap with impact to get her attention. And he said, if we're going to work together, when you come into my facility, you're going to say hello to me. And you're going to show me the proper respect and show my facility the proper respect. And the talking point, the coaching principle that he was illustrating was called, don't be afraid to get fired. This is a very unique high pressure situation. So we are not likely to encounter that most days, because I think then, when we have to mind our own boundaries, and we can look for different ways to tell the truth that comes from a place of whatever the situation is. And I'm trying to respond in this place. I had someone ask me a rather large favor, an administrator for a client that I work with, a very, very good client. And I was asked, and I already go above and beyond for these people, and it was taken to a new level. I wasn't immediately comfortable with the ask. So rather than respond to the text right away, left a little bit of time to think about it, realizing this person who's making the ask has got 20 other things going on. And the person from whom the ask came is not really thinking this is a big deal at all, probably, but not understanding in my world it is. So my reply eventually, when I decided to address it, was, I know this, thanks for asking. In order for me to fulfill the request, I think we need to agree on what the request fulfilled looks like. So if we and just figure out if I'm the right person for this task, because I might not be, but I'm very flattered that you asked. It might be that I can do it with some assistance, and we can talk about that. But so I think there's a way of taking the responsibility back on ourselves, and communicating to the person making the ask that we are looking to act within the bounds of our own integrity. And that agreement principle is very important here too, I think. So that's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. You've hit on a really, really big one. I just wrote down there at the end, calibrate, clarify, slow down, ask. And it goes totally counter to, I'd be curious to know by show of hands if anyone else has encountered the piece of advice. It was certainly taught at music college. Say yes, work out how to do it later. Just like the most important thing is like knee-jerk reaction. Just say yes, get the gig. You can learn how to play the fucking flugelhorn, whatever, later. And that now looks so alien to me, and so stressful and charged and so dishonest. I don't know if I can pull this off yet. I need to ask questions. But that encouraging of a culture of urgency, and then going, that's just the music industry. It's like, no, the music industry is made of people, and people create a culture and are a certain way in the world. And it's not the music industry, it's the people within it that are perpetuating this, rush and urgency, and just get the gig, just get it. And I love that you took that moment. It's like, okay, like what does complete here actually look like? And is that doable? Am I even in the picture at that point? Like, am I the person? That's what I'm hearing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, am I the person to fulfill this?
Yeah, you want to know the expectations going in. If I don't have a clear picture of the expectations, how do I know if I'm going to meet them or not? but most people don't think, they don't always come up in this quick bit of back and forth we have when we're trying to delegate a task, or we want to say yes to something that because we've been conditioned to say yes and figure it out later. There's a time when that's okay, but it's still it's in our best interest to think about it at least for a few minutes before we just vomit out a response. That's probably just me. I'm not saying that other people do that, but yeah.
I think it's something really powerful that you've pointed to, and the connection with this chapter that I'm seeing is Chandler's pointing to our relationship with the word yes, and by proxy, our relationship with the word no, both in terms of giving and receiving these. These two things, they're incredible gifts. They're really simple sounds, they're small words, but what they really act as is the opening or closing of a door. And on the other side of that door is us, our energy, our resources, our soul, our time, all of these incredible gifts that we have that are so valuable. And yes and no, that's what moves the door. And having yes as a knee-jerk reaction, like you've taken the door off its hinges and fucking thrown it in the skip. It's just an open door policy. It's like, yes, you are all welcome in. Pleasing is the ultimate yes man energy. Yes, I'll do it. 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 And I hate you all.
Right. And the last thing I'll say, Will, if I may, taken a step or two further, if we say yes and we find ourselves in that position, who are we going to be? Are we going to be resentful, or are we going to be, a version of ourselves that we would want to present to others? How's that going to reflect back upon us? And I think, like you said earlier, we want to turn this into a saying no into a route to beat ourselves with. I think it's totally okay that we can't be everything to everyone. We forget that, or I forget it all the time. Getting better at it, but that's tough. That's tough.
Mm.
I think we think other people expect that from us, but it's most of the time we're probably making that up. I think you come away with points for honesty if you say, you know what, I know who I'll be in that position. I think you want somebody else. And it's okay. And thank you for asking.
And again, they've been served, and you've served yourself. You're in their eyes. You're now the connector of people. You went. I'm really sorry. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I can't do this, but let me introduce you to someone. Is that all right? I think that'd be really great. This is the possibility I'm seeing if you guys connect. Can I connect you? That's incredible. And
That's an owner.
Mm, mm.
That's the way an owner speaks, right?
I'll remember that. And last thing I'll say on that, you're absolutely. It can be an uncomfortable question to consider, and it certainly in my coaching call with Nick, in which he served me powerfully, the question made me uncomfortable, and it was around this yes man thing. Um, During last summer, where I was approaching the sort of shell that I tend to or have previously become around August, September. He said, what message are you sending to people by living like this? Like, what do you really think people think of you as a result of creating yourself like this? And I said, I'm the guy that will do anything. And I've got goosebumps just saying it there. It hit me in that moment. I was like, people may not be articulating it in those exact words, and they might not be thinking of it with a negative charge to it. But you can count, like, just give him a call. He'll say yes. I was like, no, that's got to go. Got to go. Is there anything else, Chris?
No, thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Jane, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to be a guest today. This is a really powerful one for me. The first thing I want to say is that I'm feeling I noticed, particularly in the business and setting up the business, that I have a real fear of rejection. A real fear of rejection. Like at my core, it creates terror, not just a dislike, it's a terror of rejection. So that's been a really interesting experience, noticing that. And realizing then, looking back, how it's shown up, and that comes from this need to be noticed, a real need to be noticed, and that drives the yes. That drives the yes. There's also that thing about I've got to show up, I've got to be better than everybody else, that drives the yes. And it doesn't serve me. What it did in my work as a head teacher was led to burnout. Very clearly, my thinking around things created my burnout, my choice. And that was because in my answers, I thought I was serving everybody and I was serving nobody. I wasn't serving the work and I wasn't serving myself. And if I really look at it, I wasn't even pleasing. I wasn't pleasing me and I wasn't pleasing them, but I was saying yes. So I have a really interesting relationship with yes. And this is how it's really interesting to notice how it shows up for me. Very clearly, as a leader, I was honest and served my staff. I was known for being able to deliver what might be felt as uncomfortable messages, and people be thankful for hearing that message. So that was serving. You know, if I don't tell you this, I'm not doing anybody any favors. So that was serving. And in a classroom, as a teacher, you can't go into the classroom wanting the class to like you. Wanting to please them isn't going to serve anybody. So in those scenarios, I could show up with serving, not pleasing. And when it came to the business, that is when the pleasing came in. How do I attract clients? Where do I find clients from? What if they say no? And what happened to the what if they say no was it literally stifled any action. And that connects very deeply to this. It's called rejection sensitive dysphoria, this absolute fear of rejection and the fear of no, the fear of being disliked. As a horror, as a real horror. You could create it as a horror story. So it was really interesting hearing, around, I'm trying to read my own notes that I've written down here. I love what you said about calibrate, clarify, slow down, because one of the things that I heard Chris point to was the slowing down. And one of the things that I see coming out of serving is that we serve best when we slow down. Because when we slow down, we can truly hear what is being requested, hear what would be service, hear what serves us, hear what serves our client. So when we slow down, we're truly in that service space. And that pleasing is a reaction. It's a non-thinking space. It's what we do from our instincts as opposed to the thinking space. And I have a background in transaction analysis. And one of the things, and I heard you use the word stroke, which reminded me, because that comes from transaction analysis. And that reminded me of two things. First of all, in transaction analysis, we talk a lot about coming from the adult state. And the adult state is when you're not in the game, you're not reacting, but you're stopping, you're slowing down, and you're coming from that space where you're considerate in how you respond. And the second thing that it reminded me of is that we're all playing games. We're all playing games, and the pleasing is a game we're playing. And what we're suggesting here is change the game, make it a service game, slow down. So that's what showed up for me.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that and your experience in in the classroom and as a head teacher. And now, I just wanted to clarify when you say the business, you're talking about coaching practice.
A coaching practice, yes.
So um, you found an elevated um, charge around no in that space.
One which I hadn't noticed I was experiencing before, but when I thought about it, I realized that the burnout had its roots in the same thing. The tendency to want to please, the tendency to say yes, the tendency to want to show people that you were good enough.
Mhm.
So, that is coming from that pleasing state. So I saw in looking back how the two things were actually coming from that same space. And that in both cases, I wasn't serving, I was pleasing.
Oh, you've pointed some a nuance that's really, really cool, that I haven't seen. That yes has a weight to it because there's a story that means something about you driving driving the yes forward. So I say yes because that means X, Y, Z about me. I'm good enough. I'm the best. I'm the most helpful. I'm yeah.
And also that no has a weight to it. And that neither of those are helpful weights or great stories to be attached to the words. Because as you pointed to before, those words are really powerful words and really useful words. And both have both positive and negative associations with them and can be either. But for me, and I suspect for many, there is a story attached to each word, which is a definition of self.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it's the story that has the power.
Yeah.
And the example is when people say, I can't say no. It's like, no, you can. It's a one syllable word. There's something in you that is keeping you from saying no.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at that. But you can say no physically, right? So it's not the word, it's completely what that carries. And again, it's that both directions. It's how am I going to feel if I receive a no? How am I going to feel if I give a no? How are they going to feel if they receive a no from me?
And in leadership training, and when I've been training leaders in the past, this is this area of giving honest feedback. I mean, as a classroom teacher, if you don't help a student understand that there's more to know, more to do, an instrument, if you're learning an instrument and your musical tutor tells you that you're playing beautifully, and actually you're playing a violin and every note is in discord, that's not helpful to you, nor is it nor is it helping anybody. And yet there can be a sense that when I use the word critical or criticism, I said to my staff, you have to be critical. It's the same thing. There's a connotation around that that's negative because people assume criticism is negative, but actually what it means is analyzing something and coming from it by saying, this is how I see it. These things are positive. These things are not going so well. Being honest. It's honesty. Criticism is honesty, not negative. It's feedback. That's all it is.
Hmm.
And it's serving. Without it, you're not serving.
What I'm taking from this is the neutral nature of something, removing the personal emotional charge that we attach. It's like the thing is neutral. Like you carry and contain and embody and choose to live from a particular story that you have, or react to a certain charge that exists around something for you in well, yeah, internally.
Yeah. And realizing that you can let go of that is really powerful.
That's in my mind, that's like the three-step hamster wheel thing. Noticing there's such a thing as the hamster wheel, noticing that your engagement with it is what's keeping it moving. I guess maybe the fourth, noticing you can stop, and then noticing you can get off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hamster wheel no longer exists.
Mm. Is there anything else you'd like to say for now?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Sophie, welcome as well.
Hello. Hi. Wow, my goodness. I've listening to everybody talk about this has been really quite enlightening, actually, because I've been writing all my little things down on my iPad, so I'm going to be still referencing stuff because I think this defining the difference between like the pleasing and the serving is like as an actual definition is quite a new concept to me. When I'm reading this chapter, it's really interesting. And I think like I know I'm a people pleaser, but I also know I'm very much a server in that like I'm known with people that I'm brutally honest to a fault sometimes. And I will tell people things that they don't want to hear, but they need to hear. They won't necessarily they won't necessarily like hearing at the time, but will help them. You know, I'm not gonna sit there and tell people what they want to hear when I know that it's not going to serve them. And so I've already been doing that a lot in my life. But actually, and so kind of sitting there trying to think of examples of how I please, like I know as a kind of nebulous concept, oh, I am a people pleaser, but like actually sitting and thinking of examples was difficult for me. But sitting here and listening to what all of you guys have been saying, specifically Jane, what you were talking about with rejection sensitive dysphoria, that hit me. That hit me deep. As a neurodivergent person, like that is something I deal with intimately. And something you were saying about like feedback, giving critical feedback and stuff. Actually, then I thought about when I'm on the receiving end of somebody serving me and giving me critical feedback, but how I experience that rejection sensitive dysphoria because I feel like by them giving me this critical feedback and them serving me, I'm not pleasing them because I've done something wrong. And that like disconnect between them trying to serve and me trying to please is what causes the anxiety. I thought that was just kind of a really interesting epiphany while you were talking just then. And like sitting there and being like, oh, I don't know how like people please, but then going, hang on a minute, I was a nurse through the pandemic, and the thing that they said in the chapter about time management and about how often it's not that you've got poor time management, it's that you keep saying yes to things was really like rung true to me because I worked as a new nurse through the pandemic and that like time management prioritization of tasks is essential to that sort of job and but also being a people pleaser and wanting to help everybody else around you because everyone's understaffed and everything's busy and everyone's crazy and this person needs help and that person needs help and everybody needs help and you just want to say yes to everyone because you want to help but then you don't give yourself enough time for yourself and it got to that point where I ended up having to go off sick for 3 months with mental health leave because I just completely burned out because all I did was say yes and I couldn't manage my own time. And so actually, I think a few years back was the start of the journey of me learning the fucking hard way to serve instead of pleasing and to learn when to say no. And it's just that I've never had the language until today to define something that I've already been doing over the last few years. So it's really interesting to sit here and like hear other people's experiences and know that this is like something that everybody deals with. Yeah. Um, I think something else as well you said, Will, about like holding ourselves with loving curiosity and like not beating yourself up for saying no or for doing something like that. I think it just made me think of like the other day I was practicing piano and I noticed how when I got things wrong, going all my life, I've just gone, oh, fuck, like sworn at myself. But I noticed the other day I wasn't doing that. I was laughing. Every time I messed up, I'd laugh and then do it again. And I just went, oh. I guess I'm not beating myself up about that, like expectation to be that like level anymore. It's okay to mess up because like you got to keep practicing. I just thought that just yeah. Um, oh yeah, something else. I think in the chapter, something that I came into this session thinking about quite strongly was like the example they used of like the alcoholic friend and the intervention, because that exact situation happened to me about 6 months ago. I had a very, very close friend who was a raging alcoholic, and I was unknowingly, unwittingly enabling them because I didn't really want to see it for what it was. And in that moment, I was pleasing them. But then it took everybody else around me to realize that by pleasing them, I was hurting everyone else, and I was allowing her to hurt everybody else around me. And so we ended up holding an intervention for her, and it was horrible and it didn't go very well. And I don't speak to that person anymore, but I still know that I did the right thing, because even if it didn't necessarily work in that moment, I knew that me standing there and continuing to enable her wasn't serving her at all. Wasn't serving me, wasn't serving all of the friends and family around me that she was hurting. So that one hit different as well. I think one thing though, I was wondering if anybody else has any like thoughts on this. I'm obviously drawing from a lot of personal experiences here and work experiences, but when it comes to like music and like a music career and that sort of thing, I'm kind of struggling to think how one would please versus serve in that situation. Like I'm struggling to come up with examples of specifically in growing a music career, like where how I can apply this theory that we're talking about, really. Just wondering if you will, or if anybody else had any ideas on that.
I love what you've just done with asking the group for help. I love that. I'm going to quickly say, Elizabeth and Chris, I see that your hands are up. Are you guys okay if we take a side step and help Sophie? Awesome. Sash, your hand's shot straight up. So let's go.
Yeah, I thought I would just share an experience of something that I've gone through with Will before recently. I actually had an experience recently about that. Um, so I had somebody come to me saying, "Oh, I've got somebody that I've just worked on a project. They're looking for a composer, and they are struggling to find someone. And I thought that you would be a good fit. Maybe you can have a chat together and see if you can work together." I just like finished work and probably wasn't in the best headspace to actually have that conversation, and I just jumped straight into it. Started speaking to them, and I was immediately going into, okay, how can I solve this? Because what they're looking for is a composer. Oh, I'm a composer. Yes, 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 I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll work with you. They then sent me the film, and then I realized that actually I probably wasn't the best person for that job. And actually, they made me identify it because I kind of went straight into like, this is how I work, this is what I do, this is what I can offer you. And they actually turned around and said, "Oh, can we just slow down a little bit and grab a coffee?" And as soon as they said that, I went, "Oh, thank you so much." Like they like hit that bit where I was like, "Oh, okay, I need to slow down a little bit. I'm not coming from a place that's actually useful for them. I've just jumped straight into it going, yes, yes, yes." So I took a few days to actually reflect on what they were needing, prepared some options because I actually thought I'm probably not the best person for this project. So came up with some questions to ask them, and it turned out that I probably not the best person. Gave them lots of options and recommendations and guidance. Gave them another composer's details that probably would have suited their project better than I could do that. And before the meeting, I was really nervous because I was like, "Oh, I feel like I'm wasting their time," because in my head that I know that I'm kind of saying no to it. Oh, I don't, because they traveled down to Brighton as well. It's like, oh, I'm wasting their time. Like, I know it's a no, but they don't know it. How are they going to take it? And at the end of the meeting, they just said, "Thank you so much. Like, this has been so valuable because I now know that I need to go back and reflect on my options, and I'm not actually quite ready yet to have a composer on the project, and they actually had a lot of stuff that they wanted to figure out first before moving forwards. And I just said, if you're needing any more assistance around that process, like I'm happy to help if you need it. They said, oh yeah, I'll let you know. Like this is really helpful. And I think my people pleasing at the start was that there was one, I'm trying to fit in that um, gap of I'm pleasing them by being a composer, and the answer to their prayers, like they've been searching for somebody to come along and like be the thing that they're looking for, but also like people pleasing the other person that recommended me, like, oh, I have to kind of do this because they've put us together, when really that wasn't the case, and it wouldn't have served if I just kind of muddled through and try to write music that probably isn't something that I could have done to the right kind of, not quality, but like the vibe and the sense of the music. It just was a different genre. And knowing that actually a different way would be better for them. If that's helpful.
It is helpful actually, because I'm now hearing what you're saying, and I'm thinking about a very close friend of mine who's just he's in a band, and that band literally last week just broke up, and he's been very much stressed about it. It's really affected his mental health. And because he's been like, oh, but I just want to make sure that like this person gets their degree done, and we're doing music for their degree, and like I really want to be able to gig. And I'm like, okay, but are you actually enjoying this band? Do you feel listened to? Do you feel respected? Are you even doing the music that you like doing? And he's like, no, I don't really like the genre, and also this person's really mean to me, and but, and I'm like, but it's not serving you. So why are you putting yourself through all of this stress? And I'm hearing the fact that I just gave this advice to somebody else last week, but you can give advice, but you can't necessarily take your own. But it's just interesting hearing you say, like, you realize that you kind of went into something and then went, hold on a minute, actually, is this right for me? Am I serving them? Am I serving myself? And reflecting on it in the moment is, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think that kind of like there's a fundamental of like if you're serving yourself in that moment. I think like when you think of it as serving yourself, it feels uncomfortable to say that because it's like you could maybe misquote it as like be feeling selfish in some ways. But like actually by serving yourself in that situation, you're then serving them off the back of it. And it's a collaborative thing that works for them as well. And it doesn't mean saying like, oh, I'm not right for you, or go away or anything. It's doing that and then giving them options or giving them guidance. And then as well, like in the long run of a professional relationship, is that I could have said yes, 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 done it, maybe done an okay job, but I would have been stressed trying to keep up with something that I probably can't do to my best quality of what I think is my like good work. Probably like resented them, probably didn't have a strong relationship throughout that project, and then probably never work with them again because I've burned that internal relationship with them myself as well. Whereas actually if I've served them later down the line, they might have another project that I would be suitable for, that I actually love and that I can be a part of properly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like what kind of comes to mind is that like coming from like a care profession, like something I've had to learn is like you can't care for others if you're not caring for yourself. And so serving yourself is in itself saying a lot of self is self-care. Um, because like if you're like you say, if you're resenting or if you're not doing things to like your best standard, that then weighs on you. And then for the next project, you won't necessarily have the same level of confidence or the same energy that you would have done if you just said no in the first place. Go on.
It's funny how we're quick to go to the serving myself, or it could be construed as selfish, or how quick we are to label any form of input, inward love and concern as selfish. And I feel really strongly about this. Like, fuck that. You are not useful to the world if you are not well. If you can't. This is why the classic airplane loses pressure. Put your oxygen mask on before helping others with theirs. You've got 20 seconds before you pass out. You're not you're not helpful at that point. To live a life of service to others first and foremost is to live a life of service and love to yourself. And this is the point. I mean, there's absolutely so much gold in what you've just shared, Sash, and thank you for that. Um, I'll quickly speak to it. You spoke to the non-linear nature of engaging with people. Like, you backtracked, you noticed that I'm going quite quick here, and they helped you notice, like, whoa, can we do this? And you, okay, cool. And you didn't go, oh, I fucked it. You went, okay, cool. Yeah, yeah, right. I've noticed, slow down, backtrack, and then go from there. And it's something that isn't always, sometimes we think it's just linear, keep moving forward. Oh no, mess that one up. You can also call yourself out and go, I messed that up. And that is being in service. That's role modeling that honesty. Um, and then what you said about, oh, they've come all this way down and I know it's going to be a no. And it's a no and they're coming down. They might be receiving a no, but they're actually receiving service. That no is service. And the no and is no for now. And I think, like, tell me more about this. Oh, it's more of a band. You told me about this. It's more of a band. Okay. Well, I know musicians, I think you should maybe have a chat with them, connect you. Great. They've left Brighton served. And as you say, it's non-linear. That being in service in that relationship might lead to something 6 months from now. A brief comes in that works. I'd like to speak, Sophie, to what you said and what looks true to me. There's a lot of really great doing stuff and really great practical, actionable stuff around this. But fundamentally, the greatest leverage you and any of us have is who we're being. Choosing to be someone that serves in your being will show up in all areas of your life. And then it becomes less of a, what do I need to do? Or what are the steps I need to remember? Or what are the actions I need to take? And more of a, it's who I'm choosing to be. And that's why in these conversations, we're really careful about what we put after I am, because the us that lies beneath is always greater than what we can see. That's why we come into these conversations. That's why people hire coaches, hire therapists, whatever works to expand what they see of themselves, what they see as possible. So choosing to be someone who serves, choosing to be someone who is conscious of this distinction, who notices when they're pleasing, choosing to be someone who shows up on a Monday evening and dedicates time to digging into this. You're already choosing to be that person. All it takes now is practice, because it's a habit, not a characteristic. And that'll show up everywhere. It'll show up in music, your friendships, your family, at work, because it's someone that you've chosen to embody. I'm going to ask, 'cause I know Elizabeth and Chris, you had your hands up, and then Dennis, your hand went up. Were you wanting to speak something to Sophie? Yes. Okay.
the picture that I want to give you is trousers. And you're probably wondering how that relates to this. I studied to be a lifeguard. I studied senior life saving. And our requirement one day for our training was to show up at the lake fully clothed. First of all, we all went into the water and we tried to swim being fully clothed. Of course, we had our swim trunks underneath our pants, right? And then our instructor instructed us to take off the pants, tie the cuffs together, swing it around in the air and get air inside of it. And then you go and you put the legs over your neck and you create a life preserver. It's the same thing. It's the same talents that you have. It's the same who you are and who you be. It's just a matter of how you show up in the world. You can show up with a skill that you just keep shotgunning out to everybody and give. And like the trousers, once you get in there and get absorbed all the water in it, which is your commitments, God, I'm good. And you get all your commitments, right? And all it does is weigh you down. So you could go in fully clothed, you can drown or you can survive. You can do well. It's all a matter of how you make use of those trousers, how you make use of that clothing that you took into the water with you. So the wisdom comes in realizing what you can commit to with your talents and what you cannot commit to with your talents. And letting your yes be yes and letting your no be a boundary that keeps you able to say yes tomorrow. By virtue of the fact that you've learned not to go around kissing everybody's butt, but you've learned what your limitations are and what you can give and where you can be and what your real life is and where you can do that. And it's got nothing else to do with anything but being the true you. So it's all about trousers.
Thank you. Sophie, I'm going to check. I've got an eye on the time. This is something that we can definitely dive deeper and deeper into on other calls. Do you feel complete with what you've received there?
I've sufficiently been given the trousers, I think, for this one.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for taking up space and asking the group for help. I love that. Awesome. Elizabeth.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, a lot of what people have already said really resonated with me. I'm going to kind of echo that and connect to it. Um, for me, when I'm thinking about pleasing and serving, pleasing is also a form of serving, but it's serving like a need I have for people to like me, right? Or it's what I think people want, but I'm not quite sure about. And it just kind of becomes like an adding to of lots of things on top of each other. Um, and for me, like the bit that I wrote down this week, I only wrote down one bit, but it was by taking things away, what appeared was a beautiful stone. Like the subtraction of it, the letting go and letting things get to the essence of it, um, really resonated. And for me, serving is when it's not attached to, when I'm not attached to the outcome, like what it's gonna ultimately lead to. It's really, and this connects back to what we were talking about last week too. It's really the process, like the slowing down and the process. How is this moving the needle from like what my inner wisdom is telling me that I need, like in that moment? And how is this really moving the needle for this person? And it has nothing to do with how I feel about it. Whether they receive it well does not matter. Whether they like how they define it or like the outcome that is attached to, like that just doesn't matter. So for me, it's really about kind of letting go. That's what popped.
I love that bit, and when he talks about that Michelangelo principle, the subtractive process of it's this isn't a game of adding anything on. This is dropping bullshit,
Yeah.
dropping limiting beliefs, dropping patterns, dropping
Mhm.
behaviors. I love that.
Yeah.
And then what you've said also, it mirrors what has been brought up earlier in the call. Around I think particularly when we're working with clients, the worry of
Yeah.
am I going to piss them off, or am I push them away? Am I going to lose a client?
Yeah, but I'm in that. Like I'm in that equation, right? So if I take myself out of that equation, right? It's not about me. It's not about me feeling good or feeling like, yeah.
And I think on some level people can feel that.
Mm.
People can take a challenging question and receive the language when the energy behind it is clean.
Mhm.
That's why we talk a lot about the dimensions of communication. It's like, right, we use words. All of us here have we've all grown up and learned English, and that's the agreed form of communication. And there's such a thing as words and sentences, and then there's how it's said, the come from, the energy that someone's in when they speak words. And I think that we respond so much to that part of it. And there's a weight when we're in the equation.
Mhm.
And when we step into service and remove that, it's like, no, this person needs this. That looks true to me, and I'm going to act on that. And sometimes we do. Sophie, what you said about your friend, um, I saw a comment on Facebook recently that alluded to a breakdown in a coaching relationship, and it was another example of, sometimes that does happen, but it's not letting the fear of that get in the way of the service. Mm, love that. Thank you, Chris.
So much powerful stuff here from when we please, what need are we seeking to address in ourselves? Elizabeth, that's great. Dennis, observing our no boundary, we're able to say yes tomorrow. Awesome. Sophie, laughing at our mistakes, having a sense of humor. Love that. Jane, my burnout, my choice. Wow, that really landed. Thank you. Um, between the yes and the no, what started to, I think we were all inferring a middle way here after a certain point in this conversation. And it reminds me of the parenting style where we don't say no to our child, we just look to redirect. They want to do something, they want to be given something. How about this instead? Now, been there, done that, and tried it. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But with adults, in this conversation, as I started to think about all the times that in between the yes and the no, I chose instead to say, okay, wait a minute. This is probably not for me, but I know, Sasha, as you exemplified there, I know who's a better fit. And I'm thinking back through my own history, personal and professional history, like all the times that I've done that I've said, well, you know what? For whatever reason, this is not for me to do. Let me help you. Let me help you. Let's redirect this ask to someone that I know can help, and let me be of service to you in that way. I've never regretted it. Sometimes, yes, we could hear back from these clients down the road. It's not for us to know in that moment, of course, but it's really, at least for me, when I can think to do it and I do, and I'm able to do it well, it is really like it's a very fulfilling experience, and I always wind up learning something as a result of it too. So yeah, that whole idea of redirecting, perhaps, I guess, is maybe worth, for me anyways, conceptualizing and remembering to do in these cases where I feel like, if I'm caught out with I have a choice to make here. It doesn't have to be a hard no. There can be soft no's. So that's all I wanted to offer there. Oh, and by the way, with the Serena Williams story, obviously that coach took a very risky choice there, and that's not the only one he took. I'm sure you all understood that, but I wanted to bring it up too, because it definitely got my attention, about minding one's boundaries, and when we get into these situations with some personalities that can be, there's some serious star power there, obviously, and he had to, in that moment, make a very edgy choice about how do I get this person's attention in a way she won't forget. Not something I would have done, but anyway, you can watch the episode and hear the rest for yourselves. But thank you.
I love that, and you've told me that story before, and for me, it's such a case study in calibration. It is risky to go that far, but a really well calibrated, well timed, edgy push, particularly when you're dealing with personalities of that size. Actually, some part of them I would imagine, probably quite grateful. There's a leveler in doing that.
They had a long and productive coaching relationship from that point on. That's the spoiler. He got her attention.
Love that. Yeah, powerful call. Scott. Oh, Scott, I think you've got the mute on at the moment.
So sorry, I forgot the rules. Grateful to be here, and I just wanted to put my voice in. I'm mindful of the time, just so nobody thought I was just a wooden post here listening. But I just had two thoughts, and I've just so enjoyed hearing from everybody. And two kind of illustrations came up to me, and one of them actually, I think Chris invited me because he probably knows I needed this topic very badly. I'm definitely a recovering people pleaser and liar, because I think for me there's always been a certain amount of lying that goes along with people pleasing as well. Going against my own needs and my own desires, just to do what I was considering was serving. But as the resentment would rise, finding out indeed I wasn't serving anybody, including myself. And one of the illustrations actually is about Christopher Donahue, who happens to be in the room right now. Many years ago, when Chris and I were working together closely, Chris did something that I had never seen before or heard about before. there were several people in his life that he decided to invite out to lunch separately and ask a question. And the question he asked was, I think he was at a crossroads in his young career and wondering some things about how he was being perceived. And so he took me to lunch and asked me a really difficult question. And this comes down to bravery as far as I'm concerned. And it was one of the bravest things I remember. And he just basically said, so you know me and you've been working with me for some time. How am I coming across? And how is it to be with me? What am I like? And it was astounding to me because he was asking to be served. He wasn't asking to be pleased. He was actually setting himself up for whatever was going to come his way. And I stumbled around a little bit, trying to be kind, of course. And then I eventually got to what I thought he was hoping to get out of the conversation. And I can't remember all the details, but I've noticed such a change in Chris over the years of just really wanting that and that honesty. And then, of course, offering it as well. And it's why he's one of my dearest friends, because I know when I'm with him, I'm going to get the truth and I'm going to get penetrating questions. And so our time together is valuable, and we both value our time. And so that just came. It just came up in me as I was thinking about being served. I was thinking Chris actually asked to be served in that instance, and it's one of my. It's a great memory of mine. But the other one that comes to mind is the first time when I was starting to get a little bit of notoriety. In my field, which is music as well, that one of the terrifying things that started to happen was I was considered an expert far too early, as far as I was concerned. And so people were asking me for my opinion about certain things. And I remember a young guy gave me a cassette. This is back when cassettes were a thing, and asked me to critique his songs. And I thought, well, wow, that's kind of terrifying. You know, he's putting himself out there, and so I recognize the importance of that, and so I took it seriously, and I listened to his whole cassette, and I wrote a few things down. And he was obviously a beginning songwriter and just making beginning his path. And the old idea, it's back when we had those. Everybody had those little portable studios, and now we all have Pro Tools and Logic and all the things. But this was the beginning of that era, and everybody was starting to make their own recordings. And I remember thinking, well, just because you can doesn't mean you should. That was when that kind of came up in me, and it wasn't great. And so I gave him some critique and some things to work on. And as soon as I started talking to this person who was about my age, and I think he considered himself in my tribe. And I could see as soon as I started talking about the things he could be working on and, some of his hooks and some of his lyrics, some of his ideas, I could see that he was getting angry. And so I switched, I switched course pretty quickly, and I think I escaped with my life. But I remember after that experience thinking, well, I'm not going to do that again, because what that guy needed was what that guy wanted was a cookie, but what he needed was what I think he actually needed what I offered him, because I think it was something that would have been valuable to him, because I was in a camp with experts at the time, and I was learning a great deal, and so it became really important to me to ascertain, when I'm in that situation, how can I serve people? Do they just want a cookie, or do they actually want to engage? And so it's tricky territory for me to navigate, but I found over the years that I realized that kindness never needs to go out the window. But I've realized for myself, but flattery is lazy, and consideration takes time and effort. And so if I'm truly to serve someone, I have to be willing to take time and to be in that space, not be reactive, to be responsive. And I've heard so many wonderful things here today, but those are kind of just my thoughts off the top of my head as I try to navigate this for myself. But great grateful for all of the input, and yeah, it's good to be here.
It's really good to have you, and thank you for sharing some gold there. I love what you say, like kindness never needs to go out the window. And it's that thing, like, okay, in stepping into service, or showing up in the world from that place, um, it's it's not to set out to intentionally upset anyone. If there is some upset as a byproduct of something, knowing that it's only a temporary discomfort. So I love that, such a powerful reminder. It's like kindness never needs to go out the window. Um, I think that the really powerful thing I'm hearing in what you say, and what a beautiful place to leave the call. The way you talk about your friendship with Chris, built on a foundation of honesty. You know you're going to get the truth, and your words were, and therefore our time together is valuable.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
amazing is that?
Yeah, because all of our time is valuable. So it's great to be able to share it with someone that knows the value of their own time and the value of my time. And Chris, I don't think I can make it for coffee this week. Sorry.
Service in action. Amazing. I'm conscious of the time. Is there any more that wants to be spoken? Then I think we're complete for this week. Thank you for being here. Week 7 of the call. Thank you very much to everyone who saw a possibility for someone and invited them into the call. Um, there are some other big topics. Um, so there will be some more open calls in the future that I will make people aware of. Um, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Much love. Take care. Bye.